Okay, so I'll go ahead and jump in. Again, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Navigating Driver Rehabilitation, Understanding Driver Rehabilitation Evaluation and Training. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kim Stranero and I'm a Community Outreach Specialist at the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey. The Alliance is a nonprofit organization with a mission to provide education, awareness, prevention strategies, advocacy, and support for those who have been affected by brain injury. I would like to announce that we will be hosting a Facebook Live event on understanding and navigating the TBI Fund, which will be held on October 28th at noon. We are also hosting a webinar on understanding behavior after brain injury on November 18th, also at noon. More details will be coming in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. Also, please save the date for our annual professional seminar, which will be held on Wednesday, May 6th, 2026 at the Palace at Somerset Park. We are currently accepting workshop proposals and student poster proposals. Now, just a few housekeeping notes before we begin the presentation. Attendees' microphones have been muted. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please type them in the Q&A box. We will get to as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the BIANJ website. At the end of the webinar, a link for a post-webinar survey will be placed in the chat. We value your feedback, and so you are encouraged to complete the survey. You must complete the survey in order to receive your certificate of attendance. Once you complete the survey, you will automatically receive the certificate of attendance via email. Our presenters for today's webinar are Carrie Monagle and Jesse Hunter. After graduating from the University of Scranton with a degree in health administration and working in the health insurance industry, Carrie had a desire to work directly with healthcare consumers, specifically in the rehabilitation field. She obtained a master's degree in occupational therapy from Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia and has been employed at what is now Lawrence Rehabilitation Hospital, formerly known as St. Lawrence Rehabilitation Center, in Lawrenceville, New Jersey since 2001. Carrie has been an OT for 23 years and became a certified driver rehab specialist in 2003. She worked with inpatients and outpatients before specializing exclusively in driver rehabilitation for the past 15 years. She is a licensed driving instructor with the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission and a member of the Association of Driver Rehabilitation Specialists, which is commonly referred to as ADED. And next, I will introduce Jesse. So after graduating from Messiah University with a degree in biology, Jesse obtained a master's degree in occupational therapy from Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. Jesse has been employed at what is now Lawrence Rehabilitation Hospital, formerly known as St. Lawrence Rehabilitation Center, in Lawrenceville, New Jersey since 2003, working with inpatients, including in our dedicated brain injury unit, outpatients, and driving clients. Jesse has been an OT for 22 years and became a certified driver rehab specialist in 2011. He is a licensed driving instructor with the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission and a member of the Association of Driver Rehab Specialists, commonly referred to as ADED. So I'm so pleased to welcome Carrie and Jesse, and I'll go ahead and share the slides and hand it over to you. Can you see my slides, Carrie?
It's coming. It hasn't come up yet.
It's still loading.
It's still loading, but I'll take this time just to say thank you so much for inviting us. Jesse and I are delighted to be able to share this information about our program. We're very excited about what we do. We're very passionate about it, and we're really excited to be here. So thank you. Thank you to all the attendees for taking time to be here today to educate yourself about this really cool service. So we know where we are, navigating driver rehab, understanding driver rehabilitation, evaluation, and training. You can move to the next slide. So excuse me, Kim will be moving the slides forward, so I will have to let her know to do that. So why are we here today? Well, first of all, you want to learn what driver evaluation and training is, what the service is all about. Why do people come and see us? What kinds of diagnoses are referred to our program and who benefits from it? Maybe you know someone who you're worried about their driving for various reasons, and they're either currently driving or they've asked you to practice driving, and you're seeing some concerning behaviors and you're not really sure whether or not they should be driving. We're going to talk a little bit about the kind of behaviors you should be worried about and would warrant coming in for a formal evaluation. What is a pre-driver? That's the first part of the evaluation, and the pre-driver is a prerequisite for any on-road services, and you'll know what the components of a pre-driver involve. We're going to talk also about the expectations of what a behind-the-wheel evaluation includes. And driver training isn't for everyone, but if it is for you, and we do determine driver training is beneficial, you know, what the goals of driver training are. We work with clients who, some people come and drive in the typical way, and they just want to figure out if they're safe and ready to return to driving, or they have the potential to become a driver, driving a car in a typical way. But sometimes drivers come to us with physical disabilities that would warrant adaptive equipment in their vehicle. So we do offer some what we call low-tech adaptive equipment vehicle modifications in our program, and you'll understand what some of those are at the end of this presentation. We do work with the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission. So I want to say we are separate and independent from them. So we are not employed. We do not report directly to the Motor Vehicle Commission, but we do work with them. And there are clients who are already in the motor vehicle process, and we partner with them, and then we partner with them with equipment needs and things like that. So I do want people to understand how motor vehicles, when necessary, is a partner in this process. And then how do you get to us? How do you access these services and the fees involved? We're going to be very transparent about that as well. Next slide, thank you. So driver rehabilitation it's a battery of assessments. So when we come in for the pre-driver, we're looking at, you know, what are someone's strengths and weaknesses in regards to driving competency? What is someone's driving potential? Independent driving potential, and what is someone's crash risk? You know, driving is a risky behavior for everyone. Every time we get behind the wheel of a car, we are assuming risk. And this program exists to figure out, you know, is your risk the same as everybody else's, or is it higher? You know, has your medical condition or diagnoses or something pushed your risk up higher than the normal risk? We're not taking risk away. We're just trying to neutralize it and have it be the same as everyone else's. And then, you know, if everything isn't where it should be, would you benefit from training? Not everyone does, but who benefits from training is case by case. And when you do benefit from training, we're on the road with you. It's very specialized to each client, and it may or may not include adaptive equipment. Next slide, thank you. Kim, you can move to the next slide for me. Thank you. So driver rehab specialists, most of the time you'll find we're healthcare professionals. Very often we're occupational therapists. Occupational therapists are just a really good fit for this service, but it's not limited to occupational therapists. It's also not limited to healthcare professionals. There are some driver educators out there who have very good experience and specialized training to work with people who, you know, with disabilities who need specialized driving services. Many of us, Jesse and myself included, we are certified by what we call ADED. It's the Association of Driver Rehab Specialists. Why we're called ADED is a very long story, which I'm not going to get into. And I realize I unfortunately have a typo on there. It's www.aded. I have a double D there. That's a wrong. It's www.aded.net. And that's the Association of Driver Rehab Specialists, where we work in the field. We are testing, specialized continuing education. We have conferences and stay up to date on this field. And you'll see that some of us are also licensed driving instructors with the state. We are, like Jesse and I are both licensed driving instructors with the state of New Jersey. So not every driver rehab specialist has these extra certifications. It is something you might want to look for or consider when you're looking around and choosing a driver rehab specialist. And Jesse and I both are, we belong to ADED, and we are licensed with the Motor Vehicle Commission of New Jersey. Thank you. Next slide. So we see clients with all different kinds, so many different reasons people come to see us. And one of the top reasons we diagnoses of referral is brain injury, whether traumatic or non-traumatic. We do also see a significant number of folks with degenerative neurological conditions like Parkinson's, neuropathies, mild cognitive impairments, dementia. Vision, we see people can have vision disorders for all different kinds of reasons. And I put bioptics on there. That's a whole other webinar when people use special telescopic lenses on their glasses. But it could be a very simple vision impairment. It could be something that results from, say, a stroke, a hemianopsia, when you lose part of your vision. There's so many different things that we encounter here. Orthopedic conditions. So you may have maybe been born with an arm that only comes to the elbow, or you maybe lost a leg in a traumatic accident, or you had to have a leg or a foot amputated. So we work often with folks who have that physical disability and need adaptive equipment. And then congenital disorders. A large rising population of our referrals are young adults who have specialized driving needs, maybe because they were born with cerebral palsy, spina bifida, ADHD, and autism. We are seeing those folks as well when they're, young adults who are just not a good fit for a regular driving school. They come to us. And lots of our referrals are seniors, age-related changes, or they've had a medical event where everybody's questioning whether or not they're ready and safe to drive. So we do a lot of what we call safety evaluations, particularly with our seniors. Next slide, please. I focused on traumatic brain injury, but there's, people come to us because physically, everybody's like, oh, are you sure you should be driving, right? Maybe they've had paralysis or paresis of a limb, like there's too much spasticity in the muscle, their balance has changed, their vision has changed, their ability to move their eyes efficiently has changed, hearing changes, seizure disorders can cause some cognitive issues, but maybe they're not coordinating their movements, or their speech is impaired, and all these things might call driving into question. These are just some of the physical complaints or reasons people might come and see us. Next slide, please. A lot of times clients are referred to us for what we call non-physical sequelae of their brain injury or their diagnosis, and cognitive changes, their memories changed, their ability to attend or their attention skills have changed. They have difficulty planning their movements and just kind of making things happen the way they want it to. They're less efficient. Sometimes we see visual perceptual problems. People are not seeing the world the same as everybody else anymore, or their visual motor skills are no longer integrating efficiently. We see executive functioning, and that's a lot of our young adults and as well as other things, but are people making the same good judgments and are problem solving skills where they need to be? Or is there impulsivity or trouble with emotional regulation? Psychological people, anxiety. We have seen a fair number of clients who come in because driving has become a very, very anxious activity for them. Again, emotional issues, emotional regulation, I'll talk about in a little while. And socially, people have maybe not been driving for a long time, and they're realizing that they want to reconnect with their community or with the workplace, and driving is the best way for them to do that. Okay, next slide. So if you are a driver and you're exhibiting any of these behaviors and you're admitting it, good for you. But if you have someone in your family or someone you care about who is driving and showing worrisome behaviors, or you've taken them out, they're asking about driving, you're practicing, these are the kinds of things that really you want to get them in and be seen. So if somebody is weaving and drifting in their lane, they're having trouble keeping their car in their lane, cannot maintain a consistent speed, too fast, too slow, of course, but just tend to, they're driving along, there's no distractions, and it's a 40-mile-an-hour road, and all of a sudden they're doing 27, and you have to remind them to keep up with their speed, or they're going way too fast. They're forgetting what the speed limit even is. If you're seeing awkward turns, trouble turning too wide, or they're cutting them too close and you're bouncing off curbs, trouble parking in a small space, these are serious warning signs that should be assessed. Left turn management, just intersection management in general, is a person making good decisions and understanding when it's their turn, and not trying to beat cars out. Are they assessing their gaps carefully? And then certainly, when they're not paying attention to their speed limits or critical safety signs, road markings, they're in the wrong lane, and just slow to identify hazards, or they're just not responding as quickly as you are as their passenger. How come they're not seeing that? They're either missing it altogether, or they're just, they're hitting the brake at the last minute. People who are getting lost in their familiar areas, and really have trouble sort of topographically knowing where they are, and they miss a turn and they go 2 turns away and they can't get back, in a familiar area. So if you're seeing somebody who has very poor navigation skills or getting lost in familiar places, that's a big warning sign. And just generally, reduced confidence with driving. Somebody maybe was driving and they're scaling it back and they're not going out as much anymore, or someone who doesn't feel comfortable driving without someone with them. And if you are co-piloting someone, it's one thing to be in a passenger with someone and you're saying, oh, hey, you know what? We haven't been here a long time. I think it's the next turn, helping them, that kind of stuff is fine. But if you're telling them, reminding them to put on a turn signal, or you're reminding them that they're going too fast, or if you're helping them choose the proper lane as they approach an intersection, that's called co-piloting, and that's not okay. Not okay. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things that I talk about a lot with clients is, because driver rehab really should be one of the last steps of the rehabilitation process. You really want to maximize your skills in every way before you come in and think about doing driving. And there are sometimes a big difference. Someone can be doing very, very well at pedestrian speed. And then we want to find out if they can hold that all together and all those skills are still intact and working for them efficiently when they go to driving speed. And when they're not walking at a pedestrian speed, but they're going 35, 40, 45 miles an hour and everything around them is going as fast. Are their eyes and their responses and their decision-making and thinking keeping up with driving speed? So that's one of the things that, this is what the driver evaluation does. It helps figure out if all those skills and competencies you need as a driver work together and work efficiently at driving speed in dynamic driving environments. Okay, next slide. So if you come in for a driving evaluation, you have to do the pre-driver first. That's no negotiating. We always want to meet you and do the pre-driver before we do any on-road services. So what should you expect? Well, we're going to talk. I have interview, but we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about your skills, your current level of independence, really. Do you live independently? Do you live with others? Are you dressing yourself? Are you cooking for yourself? Are you managing your own medications? Are you working? What kinds of, things are you able to do? What's your current level of independence? We talk also about your driving history. Were you a driver and then something interrupted your driving? How much driving practice or experience did you have? It could be a couple months. It could be decades. We want to know that because we respect that. We respect that driving experience and history. What are your goals? Why do you want to drive? Where do you want to be able to go? We're going to talk a lot about that and the reality of the realistic. Do you have realistic driving goals? Living here in New Jersey, and I'll talk about this, we include the interstate with a lot of our services because you really can't live in this area without being able to merge safely onto high speed roads. So we talk about where you're going, why you're going there, your frequency of wanting and needing to go there, and those kinds of things. And then we'll go over some basic driver knowledge, which is in the next slide. So we'll go on to the next slide, please. So then, once we kind of get to know each other a little bit, we're going to dig in a little bit more. Do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is? Those general time it is, general orientation skills. But we are going to test your short-term memory. And again, it's not a deal breaker for driving, but we do want to have a sense of how well you can learn new information and retain it if you needed any driver training services. So, and when I talk about driver knowledge, it's nothing that you need to study for. Common road signs, scenarios, general information about any driver with experience should know. But really then we're going to move into sort of like talking about driving scenarios and how you would problem solve them and those kinds of things that you would verbalize when you're trying to, what are you visualizing when we present the situation? What kind of hazards are you visualizing? And then how would you handle that situation? That is all verbal. We're just talking about it. Okay. It's not a test. You're not coming in and getting on the computer, like motor vehicles and telling me, how far you have to park from a fire hydrant. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just talking about your ability really to visualize driver hazards, bring in your working knowledge of driving and how you would problem solve a situation. Another thing we do as part of our cognitive evaluation is attention. I want to know how well you can pay attention to more than one thing at the same time. And Jesse too. He's right behind me. I know you can't see him. That is a huge part of the assessment, how well you pay attention to more than one thing at the same time. It's called divided attention, and it's a critical driving skill. So that is something that we assess. We're also looking at, I have the word planning there. So attention to planning, which is sort of awkward. But, when we drive, we don't just think about what we're doing in the moment, right? We need to be able to think ahead and plan ahead. So we have assessments that help us know how well you're able to do that as well. Okay, next slide. We're going to look at a lot of vision tasks in our pre-driver. And yes, we want to know how well you see. Are you 20/20, 20/40, whatever? That's the least of my worries. We're looking at your depth perception, your color perception, peripheral fields, important. But even just as important, if not more important, is we want to know how well your eyes are, the muscles that surround your eyes, how they're working, how you're scanning. Are you able to bring your eyes together for convergence and see something ahead? Are they working together in terms of tracking a moving object? You know, how well are your eyes working together? Because that tells us a whole lot about how you're going to be able to handle yourself out on the road. Visual motor integration and speed. How quickly do your eyes and your hands work together? That's one of the things we assess. Also, critical skill for driving a car. And then we look at visual perceptual skills. You know, these are sort of these subtle things that we learn as a kid and then we kind of forget about and we take for granted. And sometimes our visual perceptual skills can be disrupted when there's a brain injury or disease. So, for example, figure ground, you know, how well can you find an object in a busy background? So if you have a stop sign in front of a billboard in front of a strip mall, that's a lot of busy background information to find so you can respond, find the stop sign so you can respond to it. Visual closure is very important for driving. So we'll give you a picture, it's not finished, and then we'll want you to finish it. And really that tells us, what that tells us is how well you can close a gap. You know, and here's a simplistic example, but if you have an 18-wheeler coming around the corner, you got to know there's more truck there. But that kind of skill. And then visual memory, your immediate visual memory. How well do you remember what you just saw? You come up to an intersection and you need to know what color the light is, which way the guy in front of you is turning, if there's a pedestrian on the corner who's trying to cross. You have to hold that information in there, apply your working memory, and get yourself through that intersection. You get through the intersection, poof, it's gone. But those are the kinds of things that we're really digging into in the pre-driver, because if there is strength, awesome. That's going to support your goal to get back in the car. If there's a weakness or if those skills are diminished in any way, we need to know that before we get out into the car, because it helps us know if the errors are occurring, why they might be occurring. And then it actually also helps us know whether it's something we can help you fix, because you can't driver train visual perception necessarily. So, okay, next slide, please. We're during the physical the pre-driver evaluation, there's a lot of physical skills we want to see. We do want to see your walking speed. Now, I don't care how pretty you walk, and you know, walking is not always at all indicative of someone's driving skills, but it does tell us something. Your walking speed. So we do check that out. Your range of motion, for turning your neck, for lifting your arms up over your shoulders, critical for driving, right? Just general strength for handling the car. And we have a brake response timer. So we do not have, so all of these physical assessments help us know whether or not you can proceed with driving the car in a typical way, or whether you might benefit from adaptive equipment. And I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide when I talk about the brake response timer. So that's our old one. We have a little bit nicer one now, but all we're doing in the office, and this is what I want to be clear about, is testing your gas and your brake management with responding to the red and the green lights. We do not have a fancy simulator like you're in a video game driving on roads. So we do not use that type of simulator in our pre-driver. We actually put you in the car. But we do have a brake response timer, but I don't want anybody to be confused by the word simulator. We're just simulating the gas, brake, and pedal management, but we do not use a simulator per se. All right, thank you. Next slide. All right, so everything goes okay with the pre-driver, or maybe we identify some problems, but really, the only thing that's really going to stop us from getting out into the car is if your vision doesn't meet the requirement for driving for the state of New Jersey. There might be some other things going on where we might tell you, hey, you know what, go back and do some therapy and work on this, and then come back, you have a better chance of success. But if you're at a point where you're ready, where most clients, we're going to get you in the car, because that's really where we're going to see what you can do. It's a real car, like I said, not a simulator. It is owned by the hospital. No, you cannot use your own car. Many people wish they can, but we do have a dual control vehicle that is owned and insured by the hospital. And for safety, we have the gas and brake on our side. And my husband thinks I should wear a helmet, but I don't wear a helmet. But for safety, we use our vehicle. And to be fair, you know, if you are an experienced driver coming into this, you really should be able to transfer your skills to any vehicle with some practice. And We do not go on the road with anyone unless you have a valid permit or if you're still holding a valid license. We can't put you in the car without that. Next slide, please. So that we have a generic white mid-size sedan automatic transmission car, nothing fancy. Most people find the vehicle very comfortable to drive. And when we're getting out there on the road, this is just a list of all the general things we're sort of looking for, which I'm going to delve into in the next couple of slides. But the vehicle is, we do not have, what I want to say here is we have a sedan, we do not have a van. So if you cannot transfer into the driver's side of the sedan, we won't be able to help you, because if you have to drive from a wheelchair, there are programs that do that, but we cannot offer any services to someone who isn't able to transfer into the original driver's seat of the sedan. All right, now next slide, please. So what are we looking for? Is the car a good fit for you? So we're going to start in the parking lot, and we do expect you, if you're an experienced driver, to be able to adjust your seat, adjust your mirrors. You certainly can ask questions about the vehicle. We're going to make sure it's a good fit for you before we proceed. I always say pretend like it's we tell you to pretend like it's a rental car, and you're going to set it up for you. We are going to progress. We're going to go over to a neighborhood where you get a chance to drive it, make additional adjustments. We, see how you're skilled before we would progress out into any traffic. And I mentioned this earlier, our program, we do go up to and include highway driving for those who have the goal to use those roads and for whom it would be appropriate. Of course, the evaluation is certainly modified if you're a novice driver and you're just learning how to drive and don't have a lot of experience. We're not going to throw them out onto the highway. But I want people to understand that it's a real drive on real roads. And you're on the road up to an hour for the evaluation portion. If adaptive equipment, if it was determined it's needed, we introduce it right away in the neighborhood and train you to use it. And then, of course, we may not be progressing out to as many busy roads with the adaptive equipment. We're going to modify the evaluation as well, because you're going to move on with training anyway. And just in general, people always ask, do I have to parallel park to pass this driving evaluation? And I say no, because we do not require it for the evaluation. If you're going to be moving on through driver training with adaptive equipment and moving through the motor vehicle process, then we're going to work on your parallel park, but it's not required for the basic evaluation. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for when you come out and drive for us? Obviously, can you handle the car? Can you keep it in your lane? Are you maintaining your speed? All those things we talked about on the warning signs. Do you understand the rules of the road? Are you paying attention, making good judgments in traffic? Your intersection management, protected, unprotected turns. Are you making independent decisions at your intersections? And we are going to progress from residential to more complex dynamic intersections with turning lanes and arrows and no arrows and all that stuff. We've tried to grade the assessment. There's no tricks in it, but grade it so that, all the kinds of challenges that you would encounter being a driver in New Jersey, we hope to assess. Problem solving, we might miss a turn and see what you do. Again, we're not trying to trick you, but we're trying to figure out how you're doing with your navigational skills, your topographic orientation. Can you, are you able to sort of back up 2 or 3 steps and remember where you were and recognize some landmarks? And how do you handle yourself when you do that? Your emotional regulation, are you mindful, like, oh, I just missed a turn, but are you mindful that you still have to maintain your speed and maintain your lane with traffic? And do you immediately go all negative, or can you positively reframe and say, okay, I can do this? And, what is your coping strategy if you get a little anxious about it? And how are you thinking it through? Are you planning properly, or are you impulsive? That's what we're looking for there. All right, next slide, please. So driver training. So sometimes people come in and they're just doing the evaluation. We just want to know where you're at. And if everything looks good, great. We send that information back to your doc. We tell you, we discuss it that day. We send it back to your doctor. You follow up and talk about, getting back to driving. Hopefully you have family and caregivers there where we're talking about, congratulations, everything went well. We think you're ready, and you move on from there on your own. Sometimes, though, there's some things identified in the driver evaluation that we do think we can help you improve. So, maybe you just need a little practice, you're rusty, we need to introduce some strategies, maybe vision, things like that. And we want to work with you a few more hours just to really make sure that you really got it. So driver training may be recommended. If you need adaptive equipment, any kind of modification to the car to physically handle it, for steering, for gas, for brake, we're we're absolutely doing driver training. Driver training is not for those whose memory is so poor that you cannot learn new information. It's going to vary per client, so we will always be very transparent. So we are going to try our best to tell you 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours. We're going to give our best estimate of so that you can budget for it. And then certainly what the goal for that is. And then, you know, if it's not, we're not getting you there, we'll talk about that along the way. We're not just going to like put you through all this driver training if we're not getting where we need to be. We're looking for consistency, carryover. You need to be consistently error-free in your driving for a particular amount of time before we're going to say, congratulations, you did it. If it's adaptive equipment, not only do you have to be consistent and have carryover and be consecutive and make no errors, you have to be able to use the equipment safely, and you have to be able to parallel park. So part of the driver training for people with adaptive equipment is not just the cognitive, the safety, are you doing it okay on the road, but how are you using the equipment to handle the car, and can you parallel park and do the things you need to do for a road test at motor vehicles, which I'll talk about next. Go ahead, next slide. So whenever you modify a car from its original equipment, whether you're putting a spinner knob or one-handed steering on the knob, or you're moving the turn signal over to the other side, or whether you maybe can't use your right foot and you're going to put the gas on the left side of the brake, or you're going to use hand controls, when you modify the steering, the gas, or the brake, you have to disclose it to motor vehicles because you're now driving differently than you were originally licensed, right? So if you have a current license that you're holding on to and you're coming in to do this, we can do all the evaluation training on your current license. And then when you're ready, we go over to motor vehicles. We go to Baker's Basin, which is here in Lawrenceville. We have an excellent relationship with them. And you do the road test. That's all you got to do. And then we assist you with the rest of that process. If for whatever reason your license is medically suspended, and there's a lot of reasons that could be the case, and you're trying to get that license privilege back, we work with motor vehicles with that, and then you would take your road test, and then there's some extra steps when you're dealing with the medical unit there. But we help you through that whole process. We take you for the road test in our vehicle, so the last couple hours of the driver training that we quote you is to go over to motor vehicles and take that road test and have your license, everything processed. We do make sure you parallel park that car like a champ. We're not going to let you go over for that road test until we know you can do that. And you'd be surprised if how well you'll be able to do it. And yes, you have to have a special code put on your license after you pass your road test with adaptive equipment. Next slide, please. So some of the equipment we offer in our program, it's considered low tech. So you're transferring into the regular driver's seat, and you are sitting in the driver's seat, not in a wheelchair. You may be a spinner knob is a one-handed steering device. There's a couple different ones, but most people use a spinner, which I'm going to have a picture of that coming up. Or maybe, if your left arm is not functional for driving, you're going to have the spinner knob on the right, and we're going to move a little bar that's going to move the turn signal over so you can access it with your right hand. Pretty simple mechanical adaptation. It's a little awkward at first, but most people can be trained to use successfully. We can offer gas. So if you're using your left, if your right foot is not functional for driving, but your left foot is good, some folks qualify for using a gas on the left on the floor. So you would be using the left foot on the brake and then pivoting it left for gas. And then some folks, we don't trust either leg for whatever reason, and we're moving to hand controls. So we can also offer hand controls in our sedan. Next slide, please. So I included a picture of the spinner knob, which is in what we call the 2 o'clock position, if you think of the steering wheel like a clock. And your right hand's doing everything. So if your left hand's not functional for driving, we take it out of the driving task. And I emphasize that to many clients, is that Jesse and I are occupational therapists. We're OTs through and through. And but when it comes to driving is not rehab for your limb that has disability. Okay, so we are not going to say, oh, let's take that left hand and see. No, we're going to take it out of the driving task and have you use your more reliable limbs. So I want to make that clear. It's not because we don't want you to do all your OT and use your left hand or all your other daily activities, but when it comes to driving, we are going to take the non-functional limb out of the driving task. So when you have a spinner knob, that one hand, it can be on the left or the right, depending. One hand's doing all the steering, and you have just as much control as you have with two hands. We can move that turn signal over, and people are usually amazed. It's not nearly as bad as you think, even with the hand controls. I didn't include a picture of the hand controls, but people are kind of like, oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm going to use my hands for gas and for brake, and how am I going to signal, and how am I going to steer, and how am I going to do all this? Once you come in and we put you in the car to try it, and you see it and you understand the mechanics of how it works, almost everybody is very pleasantly surprised and wish they had done it sooner. I always like to say that. All right, next slide, please. I'm watching my time here. Nessie hasn't poked me yet. Okay, so the Motor Vehicle Commission. So everybody gets a little nervous about this part. We are not the Motor Vehicle Commission. We are separate. We are independent of them. And we're usually, for most clients, just reporting our results of our evaluation to your doctor, to your referring physician. However, if you're already in a mess with the Motor Vehicle Commission, meaning that there's been an issue and there's been some medical suspension, somebody has reported you as a concern for driving, and just things are going on. You were focused on your rehab for a long time and not on driving, and now you're ready to get back to that. You tell us that up front. We know that up front, and we are working with you, with our partner at Motor Vehicle Commission Medical Unit. So if you have a suspended license, if it's suspended for medical reasons, they will give us a special rehabilitation permit so that you can come and see us, do the evaluation, and do the training. So you can't do it with anybody else. You're not driving anybody else, but we have a special permit so we can actually get you out on the road and start working with you for what you need to get back to driving independence and get you ready to be retested. If you are using adaptive equipment, you do the program, you take your test and show them, hey, and look how good I am with hand controls. You do have to have a special restriction placed on the license, and you carry a little card around, a little pink card they give you with your license. It says that you're okay and legitimate to be using that adaptive equipment in your vehicle. And that's a really important part of the process, and we assist you with that and make sure that all goes properly, because you don't want to, if you don't disclose it and then you start driving around with hand controls or spinner knobs or whatever, and then you do have an accident, just like anybody else could have an accident, if you're not licensed to use it, you could be asking and opening yourself up to increased liability. So you want to always make sure that you have checked all the boxes and followed the motor vehicle rules, and we do help with that and make that process go smoothly, and make sure you do what you're supposed to do with them so there's no issues down the road. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so the bad news is that unfortunately, most medical insurers, including Medicare and Medicaid, do not consider driving to be medically necessary. We have fought the good fight and we have tried, but they are consistently saying no, that you don't need it. It's not medically necessary to be a driver. We all would argue and disagree. It's very hard to get around in our society without a license, and but unfortunately, that's the way that it is. So most clients who come and see us, you're paying out of pocket. And it's not cheap. I'm not going to pretend that it is. It is a specialty service. So our comprehensive evaluation, you're here for 3 hours for that pre-driver and behind the wheel. If you're coming in and you have a valid license or permit, we're going to do both parts on the same day. We can split it if we need to, but most people come and do that 3-hour appointment, and that's $585. Driver training is $190 an hour. So again, we're going to tell you up front, okay, you're here, you need this adaptive equipment, these are your skills, this is your experience, budget for 10 hours of driver training. We're going to give you that best, to the best of our ability, we're going to give you that so you can budget for it. And then people need to understand too that you're paying for the service to become competent and safe, but then you're also, if you're using adaptive equipment, you're paying additional costs to put that adaptive equipment in your car. And again, we provide information about that. We tell you vendors that are qualified where you can go and have that all done. But there is even more expense when you're dealing with adaptive equipment, typically out of pocket. Next slide, please. With some exceptions so the majority of clients are self-pay, but we are a qualified vendor with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So if you have a goal to get back to work and gainful employment, and you have a DVR counselor and you want this driving to be part of your plan, if you are, if you're a DVR client and they approve it, you can come to us and they will pay for the evaluation. And then there's a separate, if we need more training, we send all the information back, and then they do a separate approval to potentially qualify you for assistance with paying for training. And then beyond that, maybe they'll help with the adaptive equipment. But again, that's all you have to qualify through the DVR and have a goal for gainful employment. We have also accepted funding from the Traumatic Brain Injury Fund. And I'm going to let that go because I'm delighted to see you're going to be having a Facebook seminar and you're going to be learning all about the Traumatic Brain Injury Fund. I'm going to need to tune in for that one. But yes, we do accept funding from the TBI Fund. The Department of Veterans Affairs, I'm going to come back to that. Sometimes your injury might be from workers' compensation. We absolutely have worked with many workers' compensation companies and case managers for clients who need to get back to driving. Again, you need to tell us all that on the front end. So if you're a DVR client or you've got TBI fund, you qualify, you're workers' comp, you've got to tell us on the front end because we need to get in touch with the case managers and everything has to be approved in advance. So don't come in and do the eval and say, oh, now you can bill so-and-so. No, we have to have that approved ahead of time. And particularly with DVR, they don't pay for anything retroactively. So you've got to jump through all their hoops and have that approved before you come in. Auto insurance, it's rare, very rare, but on occasion, we've had someone who has a very generous auto insurance that has paid for this service, but that's rare. The veterans. So the VA has their own driver rehab services. So if they do not contract with us, they have their own services. So if you are a veteran and you're looking for driver rehab, you should first talk to your VA contact and find out whether that's something that they can offer you within state or within a reasonable distance. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Next slide, please. All right, so if you are interested in driver rehab services, you do need a physician referral, you do need a valid permit or license, and you need reliable transportation to come to us. So I want to make sure people understand we do not go to you. For this program, you have to come to Lawrence Rehab, to our facility for all of your services. And when I say valid permit or license, so if you're holding on to your current license, you've just been compliant about not driving because your physician, your family's asked you not to until you're ready, great. You have a current license, we work on that. Or if you're a novice driver and you have a valid permit, all good. Or if we can get a rehab permit for you from the motor vehicles, that's all good. Physician referral. So that means when you call us for an appointment, you better have had a conversation with your doctor about wanting to be a driver, because we are going to ask you who your physician is, who knows you best, and we are going to we do it for you. We will send the referral request to the doctor. They fill it out and say, yes, this person can participate in driver rehabilitation. And that's to protect you and to protect us, because if you have a condition like seizures or whatever, there's something that you're not allowed to be driving right now, we need to know that. Or if you're on a medication that could be problematic, you might want to talk to your doctor about your medications and driving before you come in and do this and see if any changes or anything can be done there. And we just have some basic information we need from the doctor and permission for you to participate in the service. I hate to say permission, but they're going to get a copy of everything. So they just need to know, and they get copies of the full report. We need a doctor of record. We are a hospital. And like I said, you're either paying for it yourself, maybe Voc Rehab's helping you out, maybe TBI fund, maybe you have a workers' compensation case. So you have to have the funding all set up and approved in advance. And then if you are self-paying, we do ask for payment on the date of service. All right, next slide. I think we're getting close to the end here. Yep. Okay. So, and Jesse and I believe this firmly. Driving is not about age; it's about abilities. So I just never want people to feel judged before you even come in based on your diagnosis or what's been going on or how long you haven't been driving or whatever. It's people surprise us all the time, and we are on your side. We never want people to give up driving privileges prematurely. But with that said, we're going to be very, very honest with you. When we talked about that crash risk, you can't take away crash risk with driving, but if your crash risk is too high and we can't offer you anything to bring it down, we're going to be very honest with that. And that's important. You want to be part of the decision when it might be a recommendation for driving retirement. You want to be part of that process of decision making. Next slide, please. Where are we? Last one. Yay. So that's it. So if you are interested in seeking out driver rehab services here at Lawrence Rehab. That's where we're located. We're in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. If you know where Rider University is, we're literally right across the highway from Rider, Interstate 295. We're kind of in the middle of the state. And we do have a dedicated driving program coordinator. Her name is Diane, and I'm going to make her pop in here. I don't know if you can see her. So she is the person who answers the phone, and she is the person who answers your questions and helps you get your referral and coordinates funding. Like, so she's like your best friend, and she's wonderful. So there is a dedicated person who will answer the phone and call you back and help you through this process before you would get to me or to Jesse. Thanks, Diane. And then, of course, if there's a question that Diane cannot answer, and you want to, she comes to us with them, or she will put you in contact with us if it's better for you to talk through your specialized driving situation or need with the actual driver rehab specialist before you come in. Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much for that really informative presentation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So now I will field some questions. It looks like we have someone asking, do you ever suggest a self-driving car or just taking an Uber or Lyft for elderly clients versus driving?
So that's a reality, right? That all these alternative transportation options, and we certainly, when it comes to, so it depends on the person, really. Like when people come into us, we're always asking about whether or not they've already practiced using any of those services. So particularly with our older drivers, we are looking at if there's cognitive issues, can they safely do it? Is it safe? Oh, thank you. I guess my face was too close to the camera there. So in a nutshell, it depends on the client. If it's safe and you can manage the app, absolutely. We do tell people to practice using alternative transportation options before you need them, or along with driver training, but like, for example, we're not going to recommend if we have a 17-year-old young girl who's immature, are we going to tell her parents to use Uber for her to go by herself? Maybe not. That's going to be a family decision. If we have an older driver who's confused, cannot use an iPhone, or can't use, a phone, is that going to work for them? Probably not. But there are services. There's, is it still called GoGo Grandparent? Yeah, GoGo Grandparent is a sort of a broker service. So you can set up the account. The family can set up an account with GoGo Grandparent, and you set up the Uber, the Lyft, but the older driver or the person who needs it would call a phone number. They just call and talk to a person, and then the person at GoGo Grandparent sets up the ride for them, and then can even send messages out to the family member, say, hey, dad's going to church or whatever. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that is sometimes where families go if the person is still mobile and not a fall risk, but not comfortable setting up using Uber and Lyft by themselves. Did I answer the question, Justin? Yes. Okay. I hope that answers the question. So sometimes we do, if someone is not a potential to be a driver, we talk about that, but we talk about it with the family members there, because it's not always realistic for every client to use those alternative transportation options.
That definitely all makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate that response. And then someone else asked, at what point is your own vehicle outfitted with assistive equipment? Is it after getting the license coded?
That's a great question. For our program, yes, you do your evaluation, you do your training with us. At the last couple hours of your training, we are popping over to Baker's Basin, which is 6 minutes from here, doing your road test, getting your license coded that day, and then you're good to go. So that day that you pass your road test, we're going to hand you what's called I have to include this. Excellent question. We're going to hand you a vehicle modification prescription. So a certified driver rehab specialist, someone who's a CDRS, can write these prescriptions saying, hey, this person has been trained to use this particular type of training, adaptive equipment technique. They have been licensed by New Jersey Motor Vehicles, blah, blah, blah. We do Pennsylvania as well. I forgot about that. We also work with Pennsylvania drivers. You can have a valid license from anywhere. You can have a Florida license, you can have a Colorado license, a California, doesn't matter. And we can help people with road testing with adaptive equipment in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. But we will give you, the day you pass your test, we're going to hand you that prescription, and we're going to give you a list of vendors in the state or in the general region where you can go and have your personal vehicle modified. So with our program, we're not giving you what you need to put the spinner knob or the hand controls, whatever, in your car until you pass your driver's test. And then you can go off and do it.
Great, thank you. And then there's a question about if there's any financial assistance programs available that you know of that would help with either obtaining an adaptive vehicle or assistive equipment in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I've had clients in the past from like they petition like the MS Society, specific things. I've had clients in the past that have their church, they have appealed, their church has had funds to help them. There's something else. I really know if I had that, I'd be giving it out to everybody. Most of our clients come to us for self-pay, DVR, TBI fund, or workers' comp. Um, the DDD, the Department of Developmental Disabilities. So we're not a vendor with them, but I have had clients who are able to get the money up front and then come to us and pay us directly from DDD funding. I don't know if that's still a viable option. You think anything else? Yeah, unfortunately, I wish there were more that I was aware of, but that's about all I can think of right now.
Thank you for that information. No, that's much appreciated, and very helpful. Someone else asked if you can share any experiences with stroke survivor with quadrantanopia. So basically, like that loss of vision in the eye, partial.
Yeah, I'd be curious which quadrant, because that's one of our ocular tests. We want to know that you can see things in every quadrant. So, but yeah, so there are some types. I mean, everybody's stroke is unique, right? And but there are some types of strokes that do steal our peripheral vision, and they steal it. So like, it's like So sometimes it's the whole half. So sometimes you don't have they takes your vision on the left. It's called a left hemianopsia, for example, which means that the left side of each eye is wiped out. So it's not just your left eye. You're not blind in your left eye. You have vision in the left eye, and you also have vision in the right eye, but the left side of each eye. So that could be the whole left side, the whole right side, or it could be just a quadrant, like your lower left quadrant or your lower right quadrant can be wiped out from a particular type of stroke. And yes, it could be very frustrating for people returning to driving when that happens. And yes, we do work with clients who have suffered a hemianopsia of either side or any quadrant in our program. In terms of experience, sometimes those hemianopsias are combined with loss of attention to that side as well, and they're not usually successful with driving, because if you don't know that you don't see over there, we can't train that into you. But for people who their cognition is intact and they're fully aware of their vision loss, they understand it. Those types of clients, particularly if it's just a quadrant and not a full hemi, those types of clients can be more successful in a car, and we absolutely work with them so that they understand their vision loss, they understand what they do and do not see, they understand how to scan, what kind of adaptive mirrors could be helpful. Jesse, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, so
Jesse's back there. Okay, so Jesse's going to add in that.
So I mean, one of the things. Oh, there you go.
Sound away.
Hold on. The only thing I would say is just to make sure that you're also hopefully having work with an occupational therapist or a neuro-optometrist, just to be looking into that
before you come to us. Maximize all the therapies you can.
Sometimes we'll get clients that may not even realize they have that.
Yeah,
and so we'll do the evaluation, we'll catch it, and we'll send them back to their therapy and say, you need to address this first. Mm-hmm. Or even your eye doctor or your ophthalmologist, and say, this is something you need to look at first before we can do this. And if you can maybe go through vision therapy to build those skills to get you
the awareness, have a full awareness and understanding of your deficit. Yeah. Okay. Again, something that we have caught it, and again, something that may not be bothering you at pedestrian speed because you figured out how to work around it, but at driving speed, it can be quite dangerous unless you really understand what you don't see and how to compensate for it correctly. And you have to have 100% cognition for that type of training to be successful.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for all of that really helpful information. And then there was a question about how families can approach the difficult conversation about stopping or delaying driving if someone is not ready for it. How can that conversation be approached?
Can you grab me that Hartford? I meant to put this in here and I didn't because I wasn't sure exactly who my population would be. So yes, it's when driving that the transition to becoming a non-driver is extremely difficult, particularly for, our older drivers, especially for older men, because that's their role, right? And it's very difficult because it's really separating them from all their connections socially. So sometimes, I will say for a family to approach it, I should have put this in here and I can follow up with Kim and send it. The Hartford group has wonderful literature. This one's called At the Crossroads, Family Conversations about Alzheimer's Disease, Dementia, Driving. You don't have to have someone with Alzheimer's disease, but it takes you through how to approach it, how to talk about alternative transportation, warning signs, how to start those conversations, how to do a worksheet when you think about how much money you spend on a car, the insurance, the gas, the maintenance, and you put that in, quantify that, right? And say, look, we can use that money to help you get around with a different way. And so the Hartford, it's called the Hartford Center for Mature Market Excellence. God, I almost included it. I'm sorry I didn't, but I can send it to Kim. So you could start there. If the person is really, really, they want to drive no matter what. The doctors don't want to be the bad guy, right? They want them to keep coming back to them for the medical care they need. The family member's in a very difficult position. They don't want to be the bad guys. So sometimes we're the compromise. And Jesse and I have been in that role many, many, many times. We're quite good at it. But sometimes the person really just needs to come in to an objective person and have the opportunity to drive. And then, we're going to, like I said, we're going to be, thank you, Jesse. I think you just threw that in there. Yep. But we're going to be that person then who is going to tell them, we're going to start that conversation. If they do not pass our evaluation and we understand that the doctor and the family are trying to help this person transition out of driving. Again, that's helpful information on the front end, but we will initiate that conversation after the evaluation. We will be very direct and we will use driving examples. And that's why I was kind of saying earlier, we put almost everybody in the car unless you're legally, I can't because of your vision. Because particularly for drivers who are transitioning out of driving, they need to be given that opportunity to be part of the decision, and they have to be given the opportunity to try and drive and show you what they can do. So we will, give them as much of the evaluation as we safely can, and then bring them in and use driving examples and initiate that conversation very directly. And we'll take the blame. We'll be the bad guy and do the best we can to direct all that grief and anger to us. And then families get summaries afterwards so that you have something to remind the client, hey, this wasn't my decision. This wasn't Dr. Brown's decision. This was this girl, this guy at St. Lawrence, and these are the errors you made. And and then we do provide backup information for the family to remind them. But it's so hard. It's so hard. The caregiver is in such a hard spot when that situation is presenting itself. But that's why. So some families are willing to pay to have us be that bad guy and that the party that initiates that driving retirement conversation.
Thank you. Definitely a difficult conversation, but that's great to know that you're able to step in and like you said, be that bad guy, right? Bring that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, that's our purpose. But for most clients, we're trying to get you back on the road. We really are.
We're coming up on time, but I just wanted to ask this other quick question. Someone asked how many weeks this process takes usually.
Well, sometimes the evaluation is one and done. If you've maximized your therapy, you're good, and everybody thinks you're ready to explore and figure out whether you're ready to return to driving and you're not using adaptive equipment, it might be a one and done. Same thing is if things are not going well, you have an 89-year-old family member who doesn't want to stop driving, you come in, they fail it, it's done, it's one and done. But it's the folks who come in when driver training is beneficial, I would say most folks, if you're coming in for adaptive equipment, we're doing about 10 hours of driver training. Now you could do two or three sessions a week and be done in a couple of weeks, or you could do it once a week. So it really just depends on how often you can get here, our schedule, and how motivated you are to work through your family and things like that. So if it's an experienced driver, you're going to do an evaluation and maybe 10 hours of driver training, ballpark. If you are a novice driver, you're going to need more. But often what we do then is you'll come in, you'll do a certain amount with us, you'll go drive with family, and then come back to us pre-licensed to make sure you're really ready, and then we'll escort you if needed. So we do those kinds of things as well. So it really depends on the person, why they're coming, their level of experience, how quickly you move through the program. But I hope that helps. If someone has a more specific question, tell them to call Diane. She can,
Great. Thank you so
no,
much.
with no, you don't have to make an appointment to ask those kinds of questions when you call us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. If anyone's question was not answered, if you have a question for Lawrence Rehab Hospital and their driver rehab program, you can call Diane at the number on the screen. If you have questions for the Brain Injury Alliance, you can always reach out to us on our helpline, or you can email me at kmyers@bianj.org if you have any questions that weren't answered that we can try to answer. And one final reminder to please complete the post-webinar survey. The link can be found in the chat. It was sent by Chris Hopwood. You will automatically receive a certificate of attendance via email once you complete that survey. So thank you again, everyone who has attended today. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and comments. And we hope to see you at the October 28th Facebook Live and the November 18th webinar. That concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.